After a slow start, Ole Miss got it together and absolutely blasted Georgia State 63-7. We go to the quarterback, John Fourcade, to find out exactly what happened.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're going to bring in John Fourcade for his Monday evening quarterback segment. I realize it's not Monday, but this is normally going to be a Monday evening quarterback to give his thoughts on Ole Miss dominating Georgia State and kind of talking about the Kentucky Wildcats a little bit as well. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, and please give us a like, subscribe, and comment on your way out. Check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college and pro, is available. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Big win by the Ole Miss Rebels. I think they turned out pretty well. And John, I think that Austin Simmons, he had a slow start, but you could see him flash that he has a chance to be really good.
Well, the good thing about it, I mean, he didn't have the slow start that Arch Manning had.
Yes. All right.
All right. He, people wasn't expecting anything much more from him other than from his talent standpoint. They figured, okay, he's going to show up and do the job. They played Georgia State, which is not a powerhouse team, but you still got to play the game. He threw an interception. He had 3 touchdowns. They knew, the people knew that he was going to throw some touchdowns. I mean, that's just Lane Kiffin's offense. He stepped in. He's been around a while. The kid graduated early, so he knows the offense. He's a player that they're impressed with. 2-sport player, can play baseball. What's funny is I didn't realize who his dad was, and I do now, and I know his father. So the picture is this: if he can play like this and improve each week, granted, it wasn't the Kentuckys or the LSU's or Mississippi State teams, but he had to get his feet wet somehow. And if he'd have gone out there and threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, sort of like what Dart did last season, how he started out blowing these teams out of the water, then you start expecting a lot more from the young man. But hey, he's fine. He's in a good position right now. The big game is this weekend at Kentucky.
Yes, and we'll talk about that in the next segment a little bit. And the second interception that Austin Simmons threw, it was one of those situations where the backside safety just wasn't accounted for. He kind of won that play. Can you remember a situation with you playing for the Saints or even at Ole Miss where as soon as you threw the ball, you were like, yep, that's going to get picked?
Well, in my junior year, I thought about it 22 times when I threw 22 interceptions that year. Every pass I threw that was picked off, I was like, doggone it. Did I not see somebody? Or was I blind in one eye, can't see out the other? But it's going to happen. You're going to have some picks. But the thing that you want to tell is this, is that what did he do after he threw the picks? What I mean by that is, and not him going on the sideline getting mad, it's the next series or the next pass he throws or the next, down the field drive that he's had. He was 20 of 31, 241 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns. Yes, you don't want to see 2 picks, but these guys are going to have interceptions, and he bounced back from that. That's the main thing, and the most important thing was he was able to bounce back from his picks. Then again, it's Georgia State. I have to harp on that because it was Georgia State, and I don't think you got to look at what time of the games were these interceptions being thrown, and if it was crucial, critical, when it was close. But I don't think it mattered. They won, 63-7. So nobody's talking about the 2 interceptions as much as they're talking about 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the young man played well enough that he'll be. I think he's going to be fine this weekend coming up.
Yeah, and I honestly did a podcast this morning that got released, and I was trying to think of a recent Lane Kiffin comp for Austin Simmons because he's not Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart was throw the ball down the field. He's kind of 1970s Oakland Raiders in modern football, what Jackson Dart did. But I think Austin Simmons compares a little bit favorably in his passing style with Matt Corral, the dink, the dunk, the underneath stuff. I think that's a pretty good comparison.
Well, it's probably a good comparison, and people are looking at it saying, and I'm going to tell you this from a quarterback standpoint, that's only going to last so long. You're going to play against really good defensive units, and they're going to say, well, hell, if he wants to dink and dunk and worry about it, then we shorten the field down. And that means by defensively, you say, okay, they might take their time getting down the field. That's running off the clock. That's great for them. Secondly, they dink and dunk and get down the field and don't score touchdowns. That's not good. You want to take shots down the field. You want to be able to extend a play by, some deep routes and get some things rolling there. But this was a good game. It's sort of like, you know as well as I do, last year when they played 4 straight games that were against Cupcakes, it's like NFL preseason, 4 games. You go out there and you find your way until the league starts. It's a little different this year. They don't have 4 games. They had 1 game. Now they jump right into the SEC play in week 2. But with all that, looking at everything in a bigger picture, I think Lane's going to improve the offense by going down the field. Look, it's the first game of the season. He really didn't know what Simmons can do other than the film he had on him last year, that one series against Georgia and a couple of spot plays early in the year. Now you got him. You want to slow to first of all, you don't want to get him hurt. You don't want him to sit in the pocket long and extend plays where he gets injured. He might have to cut down his running. What I mean by that is you can't run the ball 17 times and being a starting quarterback on any SEC team because you might not make it to the second half. So if he can cut down about 10 runs, that'll benefit him where they take pressure off of him. But then again, Lane had to see what he can do, what's good for him, what's not good for him. And I think you'll see the game plan, as you get toward tougher opponents, and it doesn't get that easy after this game. Kentucky, and they got Tulane coming in, and they got LSU, and they got 4 home games in a row, and SEC schools. So it's going to get tougher as the season goes on. But I like what I saw the first game.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. The surprise that happened was Kewan Lacy, the running back in that game. If Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin has a running game, that's going to make everything easier for Simmons.
Well, the fact that Lacy had 16 carries for 108 yards, and then you had to look at Diggs. Diggs for a while was supposed to be a guy that he went to Notre Dame, then up LSU, and I know the kid very well because he played at my nephew's high school, Archbishop Rummel, right here in the Metairie area of New Orleans. But if they can get a 2-headed monster back there, look what happened at Ohio State. Their 2-headed guys played very well at Ohio State, and we all know who one of the running backs was last year for Ohio State who transferred from Ole Miss. I think it was Jenkins, if I'm not making the mistake of the kid's name. But if you got 2 running backs, that's fantastic. And if you can, and they kind of have a third. In college football, you play a little bit more running backs, and you might play 3 guys. You have to play a bunch of different guys in that situation. But that's a plus for them on the offensive side of football, can run the ball like they're doing. And that's why I said Simmons needs to go from 17 carries or run. Now, I don't know how many were pass plays where he took off and ran, but you can't have 17 design runs. As a quarterback, it's changed. When I played, 17 was like nothing for me because we played the split back veer. Hell, I can carry from 17 to 25, and that's a big difference. Well, in this time and age in football and college, you don't want your quarterback carrying that many times. But I'll tell you this much, Stephen, not just the fact that they had a running game, they had a lot of guys get involved in the passing game too. They had a bunch of, Wallace, right? They got guys that stepped up to the plate. There's Wallace right there with 5 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown. If you can spread the ball around, 1, it keeps everybody happy. 2, you're trying to find who your better players are at catching the football. And as well as I do, over the last 10, 12 years, Ole Miss had some receivers. And it wasn't just 1. It wasn't just 2. It was like 3 guys on every game that you can go to and say, if this number 1's not doing well, I got 2 and 3. So that keeps everybody into the game, especially the style of offense that Lane Kiffin runs. You got to have 3 receivers, 2 running backs, and you got a quarterback. So keep that intact, and you're going to do well. And I was grateful to see that the O-line played better than I anticipated them to play.
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of consternation about the offensive line, and I think that was because Patrick Kudus didn't have the strongest start to the game. He hadn't played in a year. There's a game speed that you have to catch up to. And he had struggles in the first quarter, and they kept harping on that over and over again, and it kind of became a narrative in the first half.
Well, when you say they harped on, was that like the media harping on it?
Yes.
Right. See, that's the difference. If those coaches and players on the field, they can care, 2 cents worth of what the media's talk. They got to talk about something for airtime. Hell, I've been there, done that. I know how it works. You gotta say something for the 2 minutes. You got to talk about somebody. If it's good, they talk good. If it's bad, they talk bad. But that's only going to motivate the kid and the offensive line as well. I was a little bit disturbed going into the season, like, okay, they lost some players. They had some studs on that team last year, both offensively and defensively. Will they be able to replace them guys? And they after game one, I think they're getting there. It all depends in this game coming up this weekend against Kentucky. You're stepping up in class now, even though it's not, I think, one of the better Kentucky teams, but they got through this game. I don't know what the health concerns are right now after this game against Georgia State. I believe everybody's came out pretty clean, and let's hope so, because you don't want to lose anybody in week one that can't play for 3 or 4 more weeks, because you're going to get to the meat of the schedule quick.
All right, when we come back, we will talk to the quarterback, John Fourcade, a little bit more about the Georgia State game, move to Kentucky, and talk about week one in the SEC. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you can get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorsteps by tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like that, like priority shipping, lower prices, dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com and sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5. That's all one word, SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real services. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, maybe it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in about 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment's right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it is completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships the treatment discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their sites. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege, all one word, to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but they're not FDA approved, and they do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for safety information. All right, so let's go back and talk with the quarterback, John Fourcade. Listen, on the defensive side of the ball, we'll talk just one more thing about the Georgia State game. Xavion Harris had a little bit of a day. He was the defensive lineman. He was all over the field. He intercepted a pass, a sack in the game. Georgia State was not throwing the ball very much because they knew they would have trouble blocking that defensive line. But overall, they played pretty well. Now, a couple of explosives that they have to get cleaned up, but they played pretty well overall.
Well, anytime you play a football game and you give up 7 points, you got to be thrilled on your defensive side of football. Now, it's not your fault when you're in defense that they're not throwing the football. They have a reason why they're not throwing the football, and it was because of the fact that they probably couldn't handle the Ole Miss Rebels defensive front or the linebacking core. However, the scheme of things on defense, but you can't fault the defense if the other team don't want to throw the football, but they say only give up 7 points. I don't care who you play against or what. If you shut out somebody, that's great. You give up 7 points, that's good as well. But I would love to see that intensity going into this game against Kentucky. Kentucky, in my eyes, should be better offensively than what you saw at Georgia State. But with Ole Miss's defensive unit, they're still, it's only game one. They're still trying to get the right 11 guys in that football game. That's why they did play quite a bit of players, because you have to find, okay, who's going to be my starters going into the SEC competition, and who's the backup, and how much playing time has the backups gotten. And that's what's good about playing. I would have loved if you played 2 football games outside of the conference before you play in SEC, because then you get more reps for your younger guys and trying to find out. They pretty much know who's on the offensive side of football. Now it's, what do we have defensively? And I just think they got one of the best defensive coaches in all of college football. And I believe that if he gets, it's 11 guys, but basically you're looking at about 18 guys, let's just say, that's going to play in a rotation on the defensive side of football. Secondary, you're not going to rotate a lot of guys out there, but in the front line you have to, because of the running around up and down the field. DBs, they don't get tired as easy as the guys up front. So with that being said, it's SEC time. So whoever you're going to play, you got to play them.
Yeah, and this week it is the Kentucky Wildcats. And John, Kentucky is known for Mark Stoops wanting to create a rock fight in a football game. They want the time of possession to be 40 minutes to 20 against Ole Miss. It's going to be important for Ole Miss to get first downs in this game, because if you have a 3 and out, you could not see the football again for 7 or 8 minutes if they're able to move the ball a little bit.
Well, I saw a little bit of the Kentucky-Toledo game this past weekend, and Ole Miss shouldn't have any problems, because Kentucky's offense just, I don't know how much time of possession they're going to think they're going to get, because they didn't do very well in that football game. I know they got a transfer quarterback that came in there. He stunk it up. They didn't score a lot of points. They played a Toledo team was a decent Toledo team. I think they're probably better than Georgia State was. But this game has been on Lane Kiffin's calendar for 365 days. He wants this rematch. It couldn't come at a better time, because when they lost last year, they lost at home. Now they figure, like, we're going to go to Kentucky. We want to take care of their SEC opener at their place now, because last year they came to our place. We blew that game. I don't think Kentucky won that game. Ole Miss just blew that game. I think Ole Miss goes into this, and Lane Kiffin will have these young men ready. A lot of them guys didn't play much in the game last year against Kentucky, so he's probably going to have anywhere from 20 new guys playing on both sides of football. Maybe not that many, maybe 15 or 13. It could be up to 20. Who knows? Because they didn't play a lot of guys last year that are playing right now. They spot played them, but I'm looking forward to this game. It's a 10-point favorite, 10 and a half, depending on what side of the street you live on. And I just think Ole Miss has got this game circled with Lane, and he'll go in there. And Lane, he's going to try to run up as many points as he can possibly go on this team. And I didn't think Kentucky played that great against Toledo. They're looking for their team as well. After week 2, they lost some players last year, new quarterback. But their quarterback came in from out of another school. This guy that Ole Miss has been on the roster for a couple of years. So he knows this offense, knows Lane Kiffin. So I see the Rebels going in and handle them pretty good.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Like last year, and like I said, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus on this one, but Ole Miss threw for 250 yards passing, but 180 of those yards were to Trey Harris.
Right.
It was all one player. There was not much of a running game to speak of. And honestly, if we're going to be real about this, 40 or so of those passing yards, other than Trey Harris, was on a fourth down just heave that Caden Priestcorn caught. So it was basically all Trey Harris in that game. I think that's the reason I say that Austin Simmons kind of needs to channel the Matt Corral and to use the quick game whenever they use the cloud coverage, because in my opinion, Mark Stoops wants to bait you into trying to score a 14-point touchdown. He wants the game to be so ugly that you panic, and Ole Miss panicked last year.
Well, there's no doubt. People say, well, Dart had a bad game. Well, Dart only goes by what they're calling. Are they calling pass plays saying, you got to throw the ball, to the Harris kid? What are you doing? I mean, is he reading? And that's why people have to understand certain styles of the college game compared to the NFL. The NFL game, they are reading coverages. It's here to here. College football games, as well as I do, Stephen, when they look to that sideline, the secondary is dictating what the offensive coaches are going to do. So when you see them take their time and they glance over to the sideline or whatever they may be doing, that's them getting, this is who you're going to throw the football to, or this is who you got to try to throw the football to, because coaches are up top reading the defensive coverages for you. They're not playing. They don't know what changes when the ball snaps. They're pre-telling you what to do. And I thought in that Kentucky game, you were right. They were just constantly throwing the ball to Harris way, way too much, telegraphing it. And it happened in, the Florida game. I mean, it happened in other games too. But I see something where Simmons, if you go back and look, how many guys caught passes? Granted, some of them was short. There wasn't a lot of deep ones. But, sometimes you can catch a 10-yard pass and make it a 50-yard, total yards, catch and run. Yards after catch. I'm hoping that we see that more of that now. Yeah, it's great to go deep, but you can't be a team that throws 8 to 10 times deep, whereas, you might go 4 times deep, and the rest of it's, medium 15, 12, 17 yards. I'll take a lot of them. You're not going to win football games running 8-yard slants, 7-yard slants, the out routes. You got to go that 12 to 15-yard passes, let the guy catch and run where they can run away from people. I don't know how much man-to-man Kentucky's going to play, but if you got receivers that can run away from guys, that's your offense to go after right now. You need guys to run away from people. And the short passing game, you can do that, but how long? Stoops are going to sit back and say, hey, we got a 100-yard field. There's only a 10-yard end zone. If they can come down there and they get to our 8, 7, 10-yard line, it shortens the field up. That's why I've always noticed that people, they'll give up 20 to 20. I don't care if you got 400, 500 yards with a 20 to 20. If you show up with 17 points at the end of the game and you got 600 yards, that means nothing. I mean, you got to get the ball in the end zone, and I think that's what Lane Kiffin has to do, because last year against Kentucky, they didn't score a lot of points.
No, they absolutely did not. When we come back, we'll hit our final segment of the day and talk about the SEC as a whole. Stick around for that. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether player props or building a same-game parlay or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And college football is back, and I could not be much more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives you an advantage and gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app just today, and in a couple of taps, I saw some pretty amazing deals getting in at a really cheap price at Kroger Field at the University of Kentucky for the Ole Miss game this weekend. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Now, around the SEC, John, Arch obviously struggled. Alabama looked putrid, absolutely terrible, to the point where you're beginning to wonder if this is going to be Kalen DeBoer's last year.
I thought about that myself. My personal belief is just that he's not an SEC coach. I know people say, oh, he's a football coach. Yeah, that's great. He's a football coach in the West Side. I mean, he can go play over there, the Pacific West, whatever. Anything on the other side of Texas, you can go ahead and coach in the great. But SEC needs SEC-style coaches, and I don't see that with him. Alabama looked horrible. That poor quarterback for Alabama, people want to, they go point fingers at it. It wasn't his fault in that ball game. They got outcoached. Their players got embarrassed. When's the last time Alabama players got embarrassed by any football club? And
how many loafs did you see in that game?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I think a lot of players are realizing, people say, well, they're not paying. Look, they're paying so much money. All these schools are paying. Some are paying. Oregon's paying $40 million. Some teams are paying, 20-something million. You're still paying some of these players, and that's just a part of it now. They got to find a way to get the right players, and they're getting good players. They're getting bad coaching. I mean, until we wake up to realize you can't keep blaming players all the time. Yeah, you can stick your finger at them every now and then, but coaches don't get a bypass. You don't just go up there and say, oh, we're going, it's the second year. What he did at Washington, 1 year. He did 1 year at Washington. They won some games prior to that, but he only got in the playoffs 1 year and took them to where they're at. That's not what I'm looking at for the SEC. It happened, remember, at Auburn. They got the kid, the coach, I think, was Boise State. He lasted a cup of coffee. Auburn realized this guy is not for the SEC. And sure enough, they fired him, I think, year 2. I think they'll give this guy 3 years. And if he's not made the playoffs in any of those 3 years, it's going to be a Schuler exit. They ain't wasting any time when they got rid of Mike Schuler. Same thing, they're going to do this guy 3 years and he's gone. But Alabama's got to wake up because people expect them to be in that playoff picture when the end of the season comes, but they're not the best team in the SEC. We know that by far.
Yeah, right now it looks like the best team in the SEC is LSU, who went to Clemson
indeed.
and got a big win. Garrett Nussmeier looked really good. Weird to see him in the number 18 jersey because you think of Matt Flynn and Matty Mock, and he just doesn't quite look like that. And so you're like, okay. But they were able to take care of business. It was 70-10, but it could have been like 27-10. That game was kind of a rolling.
Well, there's a tale of two halves. I think Clemson really played well in the first half, and Clemson could have put the game, I wouldn't say away, but Clemson had the opportunity to go up 17-7 in the first half, and maybe LSU doesn't come back, but who knows? When it was close at the first half, I told people that was with us, said, watch LSU come out in the second half. They're going to make some adjustments. And let me tell you, LSU won that game. It wasn't Nussmeier. LSU won that game on defense. And let's be honest, Clemson's quarterback didn't play his best ball game. And with all that hype in game 1, they talk about the 2 best Heisman Trophy candidates out there. How do you know it's week 1? I mean, you don't know who Arch Manning. The guy never played, but mop up football games in the past. So let's start talking about Heisman 4 weeks into the season, maybe, but not preseason. Before you even take a first snap, they already talk about, oh, here's your 3 finalists for Heisman. No, but LSU's defense showed up, Stephen. They were the dominating factor in that second half. Clemson had opportunities and didn't get the job done. But that's because LSU played 60 minutes of football. Clemson probably played 40 minutes of football. LSU, in my book, is definitely the best football team in the SEC. Georgia's probably second.
Yeah, and there's a collision course in Oxford, Mississippi. If Ole Miss can take care of business and LSU beats Florida, you're looking at game day being here in September, and that game will be a zoo. They'll probably drink out 4 states worth of alcohol that night.
well, if I was back to drinking, I might join them, but I'm not into that. I don't do that. I ain't done that in a long time, but I will be there for the game. Win, lose, or draw. If they go in with both 1 losses or no losses, or one team's got a loss, I'll be there. I'll be celebrating. I'm bringing a few of my LSU cronies down here who've never been up there that want to go hang out in the Grove, and I'm like, let's go, guys. You're going to see some action both on the field and off the field when you walk into that Grove. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. But that's down the road. Until you get there, you got to take care of business prior to that, because it's not easy for LSU, and it won't be easy for Ole Miss because, they got Kentucky. And before they play LSU game, you're squeezing in a pretty good Tulane team that could possibly. John Summerall's done a fantastic job down here, but that's games for down the road. But when you talk about the SEC, you can't. Texas A&M was a cakewalk. LSU was the only one that really played a combative enough team with Clemson. A&M, Arkansas. It's all easy pick. Auburn was another good game. I think Auburn's going to be a surprise. So don't overlook Auburn, especially with Hugh Freeze got his back to the wall because he ain't got much left to play around with there too. But Tennessee looked pretty good against Syracuse, South Carolina. They played Virginia Tech. The quarterback Sellers is good, but he needs a lot of work. I still like him. Florida, they beat up on the little high school team down the street. But that's what you do early in the season, and then when these teams start to play each other, they're gonna start weeding each other out.
All right, John Fourcade joining the show. Thank you very much, John, for stopping by, and we will talk to you next week. Hopefully, about an Ole Miss victory over Kentucky.
I'm looking forward to it. I got to win it by 3 touchdowns. I don't know what you got, but I got it by 3. I know they covered at 10.5 because I put a couple of coins on it. I went, lucked out and found some pennies laying around the house. So I made a little bet on it today.
That's what I'm talking about. Appreciate it, John. We'll see you next week, bud.
All right, Steven. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John Fourcade, the quarterback, joining the show. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's completely free. Your support means the world to us. In a super big moment, though, on Locked On, college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview show. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation, a two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, and Jesse Holley, a college star. And, of course, the Locked On experts. You will see me this week on the College Football Kickoff. I'll be making my debut. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. Remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you more.